After defeating the Hero King, we continue to let Sombron do his thing and return to the Somniel, getting Louis and Sigurd's B-rank bond, having Panetta inherit Axe Power 1 from Ike, and attempting a 5-star upgrade chance at the well for the first time, before going through more supports. Alir disagrees with Alfred's "I don't deserve to be your friend" statement. Goldmary has a hard time teaching Panette how to cook. Seadoll, in a fortune-telling rut, foretells Vale to act like a cat to clear her fatigue. Merrin gushes about Vale and is mindful of her attitude this time, unlike her support with Alir. For Vale's penance, Ivy makes her eat a spicy dish, not knowing that Vale is a voracious spice enjoyer. Clan shares to Vale what having a sibling is like, and finally, Vale recounts when she first met Alir and hopes they'll be together forever. After all that, we travel back to Lethos for the final non-DLC Paralogue. Alir, Marth and Vander find a mysterious garden with a similar vibe to the one at Lethos Castle, and Marth notices a ring at the distance. The trio ponder on if it's an emblem ring they were unaware of, but before they can check, some corrupted swipe it first, leading us into a deceptively easy looking map which turned out to be the hardest for me out of all the endgame maps. Our army is split into 2 teams of 6 at the opposite sides of the ring pedestal, and right at that pedestal is a corrupted with 2 revival stones that nabbed the mysterious Pact ring, and will be making a beeline to the north end of the map to escape. The rest of the corrupted will be covering for them, and all are slightly stronger than the ones in Marth's Paralogue, but currently less numerous. On to preparations, Seadoll takes back Lucina, Alir puts Marth on, Fogado gets Corin, and Jean is provided Byleth. Everyone is put into these positions, and we begin the map, with the goal of recovering the Pact ring. Turn 1, Fogado immediately engages, so he halts the Pact ring holder in their tracks, and is then refreshed to apply Dreadful Aura to the other Berserkers above, with an engaged Louis following up with an override. Everyone else then rushes to the pedestal, with Ivy engaging to set up core doubles to cover the right side, while Clan engages too and jumps on the Pact ring holder with Warp Ragnarok. Fogado freezes half of the North Path enemies on turn 2, then proceeds to break the first revival stone. Merrin is set to hold to the left path, while the non-frozen North Path foes are slain. Ivy and Louis break the second revival stone, and then Panette rushes in to engage and finish off the Pact ring holder with quadruple hits.
Whatever it takes.
Retrieving the Pact ring immediately ends the turn and skips the enemy phase to spawn in a whopping 37 reinforcements across the perimeter of the map, altering the map objective from the interesting prevent enemy from escaping to the generic rout the enemy, and as you've probably seen from the thumbnail, yeah, this map was hell. Turns 3 and 4, I survey the map first as defending the area we're currently in is unfeasible. And the first area that caught my eye was the upper left corner where the shrubbery has 1-tile choke points we can take advantage of, and the enemies in that direction seem easier to break through, so getting there becomes my first goal. Initially I try to push left, and despite taking down a good few enemies, going as far as to mass rewarp a few troops ahead, everyone left behind could still be easily ganged up on, and I burn a time crystal charged back to the start of turn 4 to change course towards the north, failing to kill one of the threatening Mage Knights along the way, burning another time crystal charge to readjust those on the left from holding their ground to utilizing Goddess Dance. I then rewarp everyone around Vale to the top of the map just to scrap this idea as well, because even if we do get some more crucial eliminations, the characters left behind are in various precarious positions. Thus I redo turn 3 and full focus north instead of trying to make the uncoordinated left to north pivot work, setting up our next encounters by having Alir and Merrin engage plus to hold off the north path, having Ivy weaken the Griffin Knight to the east with Astra Storm, and Louis enacts some guerrilla warfare to the northwest, bringing us back to turn 4 in pretty good condition with less immediate worries to deal with. We dispatch the Mage Knights in our way with Louis and Merrin set to intercept the enemies on the right and left sides of the outer ring, while the others take out the Astra-Stormed Griffin and Hero nearby, setting a defensive diagonal plus bonded shield with the fastest characters there to ward off the Griffin to the west. Merrin ends up taking most of the attacks for the turn, but also softens those that went for her while Louis was too bulky and was ignored. Finally, we make it to turn 5. We eliminate what enemies we can, prioritizing the last Griffin and whatever ranged units were nearby. Louis and Merrin block off the incoming Wolf Knights from the upper corners, and we defend the left by relying on Bonded Shield, while Panette, Temera, and Elir wall the right. Burning a charge to make one minor correction because I couldn't move Ivy to anywhere safe because of the gaps in my triangular formation, and I shifted Elir to stand by Panette instead, which didn't matter anyway as once I committed, Temera gets quadrupled to death by a Halberdier with a Brave Lance, opening Ivy up to get slain in a similar manner. Travelling back to after we sniped the last Griffin, we focus on opening the left side. Merrin still blocks the Wolf Knights there, and because of the shift, Temera engages this time, going north and sets up Great Ether as I knew she'd survive the Brave Lances this way. Goddess Dance is made use of, and we finally have control of the left side of the outer ring, relying on Bonded Shield once again to protect who we can, while Panette and Elir finish off the last Bow Knight on the right, which was a mistake as Panette ends up taking aggro of the Halberdiers this time, and despite getting into Wrath Vantage territory, she ends up being forced to use Leaf's Life Brand on her last attacker to deal 0 damage, instead of dealing the more billion she could have with her steel bow. This time around, Panette stays where she is and Louis helps her in slaying the Bow Knight, as well as covering her flank. Because of Louis' position, I was able to send Elir and Fogado to the northwest and complete a near-diagonal wall, freeing up Seedal to dance instead of Bonded Shield, so Louis can weaken one of the Halberdiers to fill up his engage meter simultaneously. Alchrist valiantly holds his ground at the south and lives because of holdout, while Louis is the primary target this time up top, and aside from the backup attacks, he's barely scratched. Hey, guess what? We've only reached turn 6. We may have had a somewhat safe area on the left side, but unfortunately there are some Bow Knights that were smart enough to not rush over to the pedestal area. Merrin weakens one, while Elir blocks the wolves and Bond blasts one of them to oblivion. We move Alchrist north so there's a convenient diamond for Veil to rewarp him, Temera, Jean and Louis, which gives us enough firepower to clear the Bow Knights. Ending the turn is Fogado plopping the Vein of Water on the Vein of Water shaped area to the right, preventing any of the enemy from touching us. Turn 7 and 8, we quickly get everyone into the top left corner. Merrin holds the middle choke point between the shrubs, while Louis takes the upper one, dealing some chip damage with those who have the range or can counter back to safety. Then we have a mishap as Louis gets nuked by a Mage Knight, and we just pull him back slightly on the next timeline. This doesn't work either, so Fogado places down the Vein of Water too, and our choke point holders barely survive onto turn 9. Merrin maintains the status quo where she is, and I leave the bottommost choke point open despite the boss corrupted being ready to come through, as I don't trust the units left available there to hold the point. Meanwhile, to alleviate Louis for a bit, Fogado engages to continuously freeze the enemies at the upper choke point for a few turns. While the boss corrupted breaks through, the remaining foes bunch up at the other 2 points. Turn 10, we have Merrin change positions to debuff the boss and block it together with Temera, as with Draconic Hex applied, she can at least tank for a turn. Veil uses her Misericord to add a second poison stack, then Temera breaks the first revival stone. Elir and Temera engage plus to help the latter's survivability, and the former takes over the middle choke point, before a refreshed Jean fills his engage meter by clearing half of the boss's second stone. As for the north, they're in a delicate position. Fogado wouldn't be able to freeze all the enemies there, and I end up choosing to poke the Sage, which also freezes the Mage Knight and Thief that I am most worried about. But unfortunately, doing that couldn't counter him far enough from getting smashed by a general, and Clan has the same problem too. Nice, we're left with 1 charge remaining. This time Fogado applies Dreadful Aura with the Thief at the epicenter, and it still doesn't work out, as the Spear Wielder just about makes it to Panette, doubling her to low health, before finishing her off with an additional 2 backup hits. This now puts me at 0 charges, raising the stakes and has me think about the situation way more carefully, and I eventually make the decision to sacrifice the choke point itself, abandoning it, though not before slapping Dreadful Aura again, this time at the frontmost enemy, making most of the area behind the shrub safe for the turn, giving us an opportunity to heal and ready up Ivy's engage meter, while also making a few free pokes. Temera breaks the boss's second revival stone, and the upper choke point is barely breached, and we still have everyone alive on turn 11. Fogado uses his last engaged turn to Torrential Roar on the upper choke point, water clogging the path, and we pick off one of the halberdiers. He is then refreshed so he can freeze and debuff some of the enemies near the middle choke point too. We then have Merrin use Twin Strike to shatter the boss's last revival stone, Veil takes one more stab as well, before we clear out the bottom choke point with Jean.
Me first!
From here, it was smooth sailing, as now I can have everyone focus on the middle choke point, with Ivy setting up core doubles early to contribute to her damage for the next few turns, and eventually distract the corrupted that will breach the upper area. We pick off enough enemies on turn 12 that only 3 of the corrupted went through the upper choke point, and it doesn't take us long to clean them up on turn 13. For the last few turns, it's just a matter of being selective on the kill order before we finally end this doozy of a map on turn 15. Alir, Marth and Vander confirm the Pact ring is an emblem related, and Marth explains that the purpose of the ring is for divine dragons to give it to someone they trust, and it will elevate the bond between the two. Okay, it's basically a glorified wedding ring. However, there is no restriction on who you can give it to as long as they have an A rank support with Alir. Thus, after going through hell, I have the key to S rank with anyone of my choosing, and as for the list of candidates, I narrowed it down through multiple filters. First, my endgame party, minus Morvier and Veil because they're not A-ranked. Secondly, remove the guys. And thirdly, meritocratically, leaving Ivy, Merrin and Panette as my bachelorettes of choice. I then have a list of 3 criteria to help make my final decision that I rank each of the 3 in. The first criteria is an extension of the third filter, and overall these 3 have had their distinct roles this playthrough. Ivy with support, Merrin with dodge tanking and debuffing, and Panette being my super strong player phase oriented unit. However, I had a clear ranking for the 3. Ivy is third because aside from being a flyer, we had plenty of other characters pulling support duty too. Panette is second because Merrin also worked wonders on the player phase, not just the enemy, so she's number 1. Criteria 2 is looks, and if you remember, I wasn't a fan of the designs of quite a few of the characters for this game, and I have to admit, Panette was one of them, but I've warmed up to her wild yet elegant look over time. However, I still put her in third in comparison to the cool Merrin and the demure Ivy, and so it was just down to my preference for the 2. While both styles are to my taste, in the end I gave first place to Ivy. The final criteria is personality, and I judge this mostly through the support I've seen with them over the course of the game. Ivy at first glance, and from when we first met her, seemed to be someone with a frosty demeanour. However, she turned out to be surprisingly forthcoming and emotive, giving quite the smile during her time with Louis, a tease to poor Alchrist, and displaying a hilarious fear of ghosts from her support with Panette and Temera. Merrin, despite trying to be cool, is giddy when it came to the 2 dragons in our army, had that dash of rebelliousness from when she recounted her backstory with Temera, and is someone who's willing to improve, as displayed in her singing practice support with Panette. Speaking of, Panette has effectively gone through a whole character arc before we even met her, starting from being rough and wild due to her parents being trash, until she ran away and met Temera, whom she was willing to put in the effort for to improve and become the elegant yet wild lady as we know her now, and is overall quite cheery and friendly. In the end, I put Panette as number 1 as I enjoyed her interactions more, followed by Ivy at number 2, and Merrin was an easy number 3, primarily because of when she jumped to quite the illogical conclusion on her B rank with Brunet, and berated him before he had a chance to explain himself, which was not cool at all, and really rubbed me the wrong way. This puts all 3 at equal spots, so in the end it came down to which criteria I put more stock in when it comes to a partner. With no luck finding her parents, Panette decides to conclude her search and thanks Alir for their enjoyable time together during the process, and hopes they can continue being together. Alir answers by presenting the Pact ring, which causes Panette to fear that their relationship may sour just like her parents, but Alir persists, stating that we all have our ups and downs, and remarks that he remembers that the speed stat is very important, impressing Panette before asking if she'll accept the ring, and she does so gladly, thus becoming matrimonially engaged.